Hello and welcome to tutorial 226, and in this tutorial what we're doing is using essentially the same programs that I used in Quick Tips 104, but the problem with those programs in Quick Tips 104 was that they both had their own independent inputs, and that worked fine so long as you remembered to make sure that the inputs were both. So what this program does, or what this tutorial goes through, is how we can make it so that we just have one set of inputs for one of the programs, and those inputs are shared with the other program, in other words, the PaintBar study. So for example, if I were to, in this case, change the inputs in the indicator, and what I'm going to do is just increase the high threshold. At the moment it's 1.4, so I'll make it say 2, and what you'll see is that where this included several bars before, now the number of bars there has been reduced because there are only fewer bars where the upper line is above this cyan line on the chart. So if that doesn't make sense, just look back and see what it was like a few seconds before I changed the value. But anyway, the value that I've applied to the indicator is now being shared with the PaintBar study as well. So let me just show you how I went about this. First of all, we'll look at the indicator. This is very similar to the quick tip, but what we've done is we've created a new dictionary object, global dictionary object. We're using GlobalDictionary.create as the way that we do that. Now this is meant to be applied just to a single chart, so I'm not don't need to do anything in addition to that, but GlobalDictionary.create. Incidentally, if you wanted another example of using Global Dictionary to share a value calculated for each bar on a chart, then look at, I think it was tutorial 161. Anyway, having created the Global Dictionary, then what I've done is put the value of each of the inputs, in other words ATR length, ATR baseline length, etc., into the dictionary, and I've done that using the symbol and then the text of the input. So ATR length, get symbol name, then ATR baseline length, get symbol name, low threshold. So what the program does when it runs, it will take whatever symbol we're applied to, for example AM, CN, Amazon, and it will concatenate that with this value here, and that just means that it's specific to the chart, provided we haven't got other charts in the workspace with the same symbol. The program does the calculation very much like we did in the quick tip, and you can look back at the quick tip 104 just to remind yourself how that works. Essentially everything's the same there, but now in the PaintBar study we've got slightly bigger changes, and incidentally make sure you load the namespaces in. Also in the study we just looked at, make sure you load the namespace. So anyway, for the PaintBar study we've got, well, you'll notice that we don't have any inputs, because what I've done is taken the values that we had before and I put those in as variables with the default value. What I also did here is have the global dictionary T226 inputs, and I'm not sure I showed you that in the indicator, but we have that there also in the indicator. So back to the PaintBar study, and let's first of all look at the one statement. So in the one statement we're creating the global dictionary again. So what this does, it actually initiates, or if the dictionary already exists, it just returns a reference to the dictionary. So if one of these programs were applied to a chart before the other, then the other one would get the reference and the creation would be done in the one that was applied first. And then we've got update dict. So what this does, let me just show you the update dict. I've set it as a method. What this is saying is if the T226 inputs dot contains the name, then we will take the value from that value in the dictionary. So going back to the indicator, we created the dictionary, and then we added two various keys. So we've got the key, get symbol name, then ATR length. Then we put the value of the ATR length, of the ATR baseline length, of all the inputs into the dictionary. In the PaintBar study, what we're doing is saying, well, if there is a key with that value, then store from the dictionary the value into ATR length. And the syntax is just as follows. In fact, you'll notice each time I've said as type string, and then we're applying it, we're setting it as an integer. Except for the threshold, that's a double. There's the high threshold, that's a double. And then we've also got a Boolean here, and we get that slightly differently. But we take the values that are in the dictionary, and they populate the would-be inputs that we've actually set up here as variables. They populate those values. So that is the almost the one statement. The other thing we do is we set up an event handler. So what this does is for the dictionary, in other words T226 inputs, if an item changes, in other words, if, for example, in the indicator we made a change to one of the values, then this will cause this event handler to fire. And if the event handler fires, then we go to the update event handler, and what I've done there is also made a call to update dict. So that will do exactly the same. It will go through and update the values for the input variables. And it's no good doing that unless thrown a recalculate exception. So what we do, we also do that in the update event. So going back to the one statement, I think almost everything. Just one thing, what I did, just as an example, it's not really super relevant to this particular tutorial, but this is something that we covered way back in Quick Tip 33, and that is just how you would go about using a color object to color a plot. So what I've done here is taken this value hot pink, just because I happen to be using that in the plot for the indicator, and we then call this little method that I created in Quick Tip 33 to get the plot color equivalent. Anyway, having got all the inputs and that's all set up nicely, we can then do the calculation just as we did in the indicator, except now instead of plotting lines we're plotting paint bars, and then we plot those, and we use what we just talked about, the plot color, as one of the colors in the PaintBar plot. And so again, just to demonstrate, if I make a change, so for example, go to the let's just pick a different chart, for instance, okay, Citibank, and you see here we've got quite a large area of this top level of the value of whether the volatility, and because it's the highest level, in other words 3, we're getting these pink lines. The next one, it's a level 2, then we get the green, and then the lower line, which is 1, we get the red line. So what I'm going to do is just go into the studies and edit the study, and in the indicator I'm just going to reduce the high threshold. At the moment it's 1, so I'm just going to change that to, for example, 0.8, and having done that, you'll see quite a few changes here. And one thing, for example, you'll see that we've got some cases where we get the pink lines appearing here. So just to show you that by changing something for the indicator, that is then changed also for the PaintBar study. Anyway, hopefully you might find this useful. Please join the Markplex email list, and also subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll let you know when I create new tutorials or programs. Also, if you had any questions on this, please feel free to email them to me. The program itself is going to be available for download if you're interested, or in fact for Gold Pass members it will be available for free. Thank you very much. Bye bye.